Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be able to start off our One Book, One School with Sideway Stories from Wayside School. This book, the introduction says, contains 36 stories about children and teachers at Wayside School. But before we get to them, there is something you ought to know so that you don't get confused. Wayside School was accidentally built sideways. It was supposed to be only one story high with 36 classrooms all in a row. Instead, it was 36 stories high with one classroom on each story. The builder said he was very sorry. The children at Wayside like having a sideways school. They have extra large playground. The children and teachers described in this book all go to class on the top floor. So there are 30 stories from the 30th story of Wayside School. It has been said that these stories are strange and silly. That is probably true. However, when I told stories about you to children at Wayside, they thought you were strange and silly too. And that could be true too. Chapter 1. Miss Gorf. Miss Gorf had a long tongue and pointed ears. She was the meanest teacher in Wayside School. She taught the class on the 30th story. If you children are bad, she warned, or if you answer a problem wrong, I'll wiggle my ears, stick out my tongue, and turn you into apples. Miss Gorf didn't like children, but she loved apples. Joe couldn't add. He couldn't even count. But he knew that if he answered the problem wrong, he would be turned into an apple, so he copied from John. He didn't like to cheat, but Miss Gorf had never taught him how to add. One day, Miss Gorf caught Joe copying John's paper. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Joe into an apple. Then she turned John into an apple for letting Joe cheat. "Hey, that isn't fair," said Todd. "John was only trying to help a friend." Miss Gorf wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left one, stuck out her tongue, and she turned Todd into an apple too. "Does anyone else have an opinion?" she asked. Nobody said a word. Miss Gorf laughed and placed the 3 apples on her desk. Stephen started to cry. He couldn't help it. He was scared. "I do not allow crying in the classroom," said Miss Gorf. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left one, stuck out her tongue, and turned Stephen into, you got it, an apple. For the rest of the day, the children were absolutely quiet, and when they went home, they were too scared even to talk to their parents. But Joe, John, Todd, and Stephen couldn't go home. Miss Gorf just left them on her desk. They were able to talk to each other, but they didn't have much to say. Their parents were very worried. They didn't know where their children were, and nobody seemed to know. The next day, Kathy was late for school, and as soon as she walked in, guess what Miss Gorf did? Turned her into an apple. Paul sneezed during class. He was turned into an apple too. Nancy said, "God bless you," when Paul sneezed. Miss Gorf wiggled her ears. We know where this was going. First her right one, then her left one, stuck out her tongue, and turned Nancy into an apple. Terrence fell out of his chair. He was turned into an apple. Mauricia tried to run away. She was halfway to the door, and Miss Gorf's right ear began to wiggle. When she reached the door, Miss Gorf's left ear wiggled. Mauricia opened the door and had one foot outside when Miss Gorf stuck out her tongue. Mauricia became an apple. Miss Gorf picked up the apple from the floor and put it on her desk with the others. Then a funny thing happened. Miss Gorf turned around and fell over a piece of chalk. The 3 Erics laughed, turned into apples. Miss Gorf had a dozen apples on her desk. John, Joe, Todd, Stephen, Kathy, Paul, Nancy, Terrence, Mauricia, and the 3 Erics. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and Eric Ovens. Lewis, the yard teacher, walked into the classroom. He had missed all the children at recess. He had heard that Miss Gorf was a mean teacher, so he came up to investigate. He saw 12 apples on Miss Gorf's desk. I must be wrong, he thought. She must be a good teacher, so many children are bringing her apples. He walked back down to the playground. The next day, a dozen more children were turned into apples. Lewis, the yard teacher, came back into the room. He saw 24 on Miss Gorf's desk. There were only 3 children left in class. She must be the best teacher in the world, he thought. By the end of the week, all of the children were apples. Miss Gorf was very happy. Now I can go home, she said, and I don't have to teach anymore. I won't have to walk up 30 flights of stairs ever again. You're not going anywhere, shouted Todd. He jumped off the desk and bopped Miss Gorf on the side of the nose. The rest of the apples followed. Miss Gorf fell on the floor. The apples jumped all over her. Many of you right now in your class have been working on creating a picture in your mind of what you're reading. Can you see Miss Gorf laying on the ground and all of these apples jumping off and attacking her? How funny is that? Stop, she shouted, or I'll turn you into applesauce. But the apples didn't stop, and Miss Gorf could do nothing about it. Turn us back into children, Todd demanded. Miss Gorf had no choice. She stuck out her tongue, wiggled her ears, and this time her left one first, then her right one, and turned all of the apples back into children. All right, said Mauricia, let's go get Lewis. He'll know what to do. No, screamed Miss Gorf, I'll turn you back into apples. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left one, and stuck out her tongue. But Jenny held up a mirror. And Miss Gorf, you're not going to believe it. She held up the mirror and she turned herself into an apple. The children didn't know what to do. They didn't have a teacher, but even though Miss Gorf was mean, they didn't think it was right to leave her as an apple. But none of them knew how to wiggle their ears. Lewis, the yard teacher, walked in and said, "Where's Miss Gorf?" he asked. Nobody said a word. Boy, am I hungry, said Lewis. I don't think Miss Gorf would mind if I ate this apple. After all, she had so many. Uh-oh, what do you think is going to happen? He picked up the apple, which was really Miss Gorf, shined it up on his shirt, and ate it. Oh, my goodness. Chapter 2. I can't wait. Miss Jules. Wonder what's going to happen to Miss Jules.